Clara and Yelena thought they were just two best friends treating themselves to a beauty day. But when they stepped into the hidden salon for a Russian manicure, they didn't realize they were walking straight into a nightmare. What started as flawless perfection soon turned into something alive beneath their nails. Something that fed, spread, and clawed its way deeper than skin. And when the cracking began, they understood too late the salon wasn't just beautifying them, it was breeding something through them. The first time I heard about the Russian manicure, it sounded like something elegant, delicate, and harmless. Social media was filled with glossy pictures of perfect nails, polished to an unnatural smoothness, cuticles trimmed so cleanly they looked painted on. The promise of flawless beauty drew me in, but I didn't realize that what I thought was a simple indulgence would lead me into something I couldn't escape from. The salon I found wasn't like the modern ones I had seen online. It was tucked away on a side street I rarely walked down, hidden between a shuttered bookstore and a pawn shop with broken neon lights. Its windows were draped with heavy dark curtains that blocked out the daylight. The sign above the door was weathered and faded, its letters peeling away as though even time itself wanted to erase the place. My instincts told me to turn around, but vanity is louder than fear, and I pushed open the door. The smell hit me first. Not the pleasant mix of polish and perfume I had expected, but a heavy chemical scent layered with something metallic and sour. The air felt thick in my throat, clinging like smoke. The lights inside flickered weakly, casting long shadows that stretched across the floor like grasping hands. Every chair was empty except one at the far end of the room, where a workstation sat under a single lamp. A woman appeared from the back without a word. Her skin looked pale, almost gray under the light, and her eyes were shadowed as though she hadn't slept in years. She wore gloves so tight they looked like they had been painted on. She didn't ask me what I wanted. She didn't speak at all, just gestured toward the chair. The seat was cold and unwelcoming, stiff against my back. I placed my hands on the table, trying to convince myself that this was just another beauty treatment, that the unease settling in my stomach was just nerves. Her tools were laid out neatly, gleaming under the lamp. The buzzing started almost immediately, sharp and shrill, an electric drill screaming into the silence. She pressed it against my nail, and the vibration tore through me, not just in my fingers but deep into my bones. I had had manicures before, but nothing this aggressive. She carved away at my cuticles with slow precision, pushing closer and deeper than felt safe. I flinched at every pass, waiting for pain, waiting for her to nick the skin. I looked around the workstation, desperate to distract myself, and noticed stains along the edge of the table. They weren't obvious, as though someone had tried to scrub them clean, but the reddish tint remained, sunken into the wood like a memory that refused to fade. My mouth went dry. When I turned back to her hands, I thought I saw a small drop of blood clinging to the tip of her tool. It glistened under the light for a heartbeat before vanishing as if it had been absorbed. I blinked hard, telling myself it was just the glare, just my imagination. The session felt endless. Every second stretched into minutes, every movement carving deeper. My fingertips throbbed, not from pain exactly, but from a strange tingling that spread beneath the skin. I clenched my teeth, fighting the urge to pull away, to leave. When she finally finished, she leaned back without a sound, leaving me to stare at my nails. They looked unreal, more like porcelain than human. Smooth, glossy, perfect in a way that made me uncomfortable. I couldn't stop staring at them, yet the longer I looked, the less they felt like they belonged to me. As I stood to leave, I caught my reflection in a smudged mirror across the room. My face looked pale, my eyes uneasy, but what froze me was my hands. The nails caught the light differently than they should have, reflecting not just shine but something deeper, something alive. I turned quickly, but the reflections seemed to linger in my vision, burned into my mind. Outside, the air felt colder than before, sharp against my skin. I shoved my hands into my pockets, trying to shake the strange sensation buzzing beneath my fingertips. By the time I reached home, the tingling had grown stronger, like tiny movements beneath the surface of my skin. I sat in the dark of my bedroom, staring at my flawless nails, unable to shake the memory of that faded salon, the pale woman, and the stains she couldn't quite erase. When I finally turned off the light to sleep, I rolled onto my side and closed my eyes, desperate for rest. But in the blackness of my room, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My nails were glowing faintly in the dark, a soft, unnatural light pulsing as if something inside them had just begun to wake up. The morning light should have comforted me, but when I woke, it only deepened my dread. My nails looked even more flawless than the night before, polished to a perfection that felt almost artificial. Yet the skin around them had grown strangely pale, as if the blood had been drained away. When I pressed my fingertips against the table, I felt something I couldn't explain, a faint hum, like vibration through the wood. I pressed harder, and the sensation grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I told myself I was imagining it, that the salon's strange atmosphere had simply unsettled me. I tried to go about my day as usual, but my hands betrayed me. Without realizing it, I scratched the surface of my desk while reading emails, carving fine grooves into the wood. My co-workers didn't notice, but I did. The scratches matched the exact curve of my nails. I pulled my hands into my lap, trembling, but later, when I looked again, there were more marks, deeper ones, as though my hands had been busy even when I wasn't aware of them. That evening I went to wash my hands, hoping water would rinse away the uneasy feeling clinging to me. But when I placed my fingertips under the faucet, the water swirling down the sink turned faintly pink. For a moment I thought I had cut myself, but there was no wound, no pain. The red seemed to seep directly from the edges of my cuticles, oozing in thin streams. I scrubbed furiously, but the stains only spread, clinging to the porcelain of the sink like watered-down paint. I reached for the nail scissors, desperate to cut them short, to make them look human again. But when I tried, the metal snapped with a sharp crack, the broken blades flying across the bathroom floor. My nails didn't even chip. I tried again with another pair, pressing harder, but the result was the same. The nails weren't just hard, they were unbreakable. My breathing grew shallow as I realized the truth. They weren't nails anymore. They were something else, something harder than bone, sharper than glass. I turned to the mirror, staring at my reflection with growing horror. My face was pale, my eyes sunken from lack of sleep, but it was my hands that terrified me most. The nails were slightly longer than the night before, and under the bathroom light, they glinted like polished metal. They curved just enough to make them look unnatural, catching shadows in a way that made them resemble claws. I lifted them slowly, watching the light bounce across their surface. For a moment, I swore I saw a faint movement beneath them, like liquid trapped inside a shell. I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion, that I was overthinking, that nails couldn't possibly move on their own. But when I wrapped them in bandages to hide them, I felt the fabric straining as though something inside me pushed against it. My fingers twitched uncontrollably, tapping against the countertop in jagged rhythms. I clenched my fists, whispering silently in my head that I was still in control, that they were only nails. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, the bandages tight around my hands. The room was quiet, but then I heard it scratching, faint, steady sound, like fingernails dragging across wood. I froze, listening. The sound was coming from the wall behind me, just above my head. My body stiffened, every muscle locked in fear. Slowly I turned and pressed my ear against the wall. The scratching grew louder, faster, more frantic, as though something inside the wall was trying to claw its way out. I pulled back, staring into the darkness, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound stopped suddenly, replaced by silence so heavy it seemed to press against me. I forced myself to breathe, telling myself it was nothing, just my imagination, the creaks of an old house. But when I glanced down at my hands, I felt a fresh wave of horror wash over me. The bandages I had wrapped so tightly before bed were shredded, hanging in tatters around my wrists. My fingers were bare, my nails gleaming faintly even in the darkness. I hadn't taken them off, I hadn't moved at all. Yet something had, and it was using my hands. I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the scratching sound returning, louder and closer, until it wasn't just in the walls but inside me. My hands throbbed constantly, as though blood was rushing into them with every heartbeat. I tried wearing gloves during the day, but even thick fabric couldn't hide the shape of my nails. They pressed against the material, curving outward like blades eager to slice through. My coworkers started asking if I was all right, their eyes drifting to my hands whenever I forgot to hide them under the desk. I muttered excuses about being tired, but I knew I couldn't keep this up much longer. At home, things were worse. I would wake to find my sheets torn apart, long slashes running through the fabric as though an animal had clawed at them. The wood of my nightstand bore fresh grooves, deep and jagged. Once, I discovered scratches across my own arms, thin lines that had scabbed over without me ever feeling them. It wasn't just happening when I was awake. My body was moving without my permission, my hands working while I slept. The nails themselves were changing. The cuticles had receded further than they should, exposing too much of the nail bed, making my fingertips look grotesque. The skin around them was darkening, bruised and raw, as if something underneath was feeding while the rest of me weakened. Every time I looked closely, I thought I could see faint pulsations traveling through the nails, tiny surges of light that made them glow for a split second before fading again. They weren't just growing, they were alive. I thought about going back to the salon, demanding answers, maybe even begging the woman to undo whatever she had done. But when I returned to the street, my stomach sank. The salon was gone. Where the faded sign had once been, there was nothing but cracked wood. The windows were boarded up, sealed with heavy planks painted black. I stared for a long time, hoping to catch some sign that I was in the wrong place. But the bookstore was still there, the pawn shop still buzzing with its broken neon lights. The space in between had been abandoned, as if it had never existed at all. Panic welled in my chest. I tried to remember the woman's face, the way she had looked at me, but all I could recall were her hands, gloved, pale, moving with steady precision. It was as though her features had been erased from my memory, leaving behind only the image of fingers working tirelessly over mine. The more I tried to picture her, the blurrier she became, until I felt dizzy and sick with frustration. That night I taped my fingers together, binding them tightly with layers of medical tape. The pressure made my skin ache, but I thought maybe it would keep me safe while I slept. I lay awake for hours, fighting the urge to drift off, but eventually exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke, the first thing I felt was pain. My arms burned, my skin raw and stinging. I tore back the covers and saw deep scratches across my forearms, fresh blood staining the sheets. The tape I had wrapped so carefully was shredded into ribbons. My hands were free, my nails gleaming as if nothing could restrain them. I staggered to the bathroom, trembling as I flicked on the light. The reflection in the mirror made me recoil. My nails weren't just glowing faintly anymore, they were pulsing. Each one throbbed in perfect time with my heartbeat, emitting a faint shimmer that made them look as though something inside was pressing outward. I pressed my fingers against the sink, gripping the porcelain, and felt the vibration again, stronger this time, deeper, like a second pulse trying to replace my own. I couldn't deny it any longer. My nails weren't part of me. They were something else, something alive and growing, and they weren't finished yet. I stopped leaving the house after that. The thought of anyone seeing my hands filled me with a kind of shame and fear I couldn't explain. The nails had grown so long they curled slightly at the ends, their surfaces gleaming with an unnatural sheen. Gloves no longer worked. No matter how thick the fabric, the nails tore through it within hours, shredding the material as if it were paper. My hands had become impossible to hide. Monstrous things had no longer belonged to me. The humming sensation beneath my skin had grown louder, constant now, a low vibration that never stopped. It wasn't just in my fingers anymore. It had spread into my wrists, crawling up my forearms like invisible wires threading themselves deeper inside me. Sometimes I would press my hands flat against the wall just to feel the vibration echoing through the plaster. It felt less like a part of my body and more like a swarm trying to escape. I tried to fight it. I tried everything I could think of. I lit a candle one night and held my fingertips over the flame, willing myself to keep them there until they burned away. The heat seared my skin, blistering the flesh, but the nails didn't react at all. They didn't even warm. Instead, they shimmered, catching the light of the flame in a way that made them look brighter, more polished. It was as though they fed on the fire. I pulled away, crying out in pain, staring at the raw skin on my fingertips. The nails glistened proudly, stronger than ever. I couldn't bear to look at my reflection anymore, but sometimes I caught glimpses of it when I passed the mirror in the hallway. My face looked gaunt, my skin pale, but my hands stood out like beacons. The nails gleamed unnaturally, reflecting light even in the dimmest shadows. Once, when I dared to lean closer, I saw something move beneath their surface, tiny shapes writhing just under the hardened shell, pressing outward in slow, deliberate motions. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just me they were feeding on, they were growing, changing, and something was trapped inside them. Sleep became impossible. The scratching never stopped now. It wasn't only in the walls anymore. I could feel it inside my chest, in my bones, in the back of my skull. At night, when the house was silent, the sound grew louder, an endless clawing echo that made me want to tear my skin off just to make it stop. Sometimes I would look down and see my nails twitching on their own, tapping rhythms I didn't understand against the sheets. My hands no longer moved when I told them to. They twitched, flexed, scratched, all on their own, as if controlled by something waiting beneath the surface. I thought maybe if I cut them at the base, I could get rid of them. I took a kitchen knife and pressed it against one of the nails, bracing myself. But the blade slid off as if the surface was slick stone. I tried sawing, stabbing, smashing them against the countertop. Nothing worked. The nails didn't chip or crack. Instead, each attempt sent vibrations shooting up my arms, a punishing force that left me weak and shaking, my vision blurring as though they were punishing me for resisting. The realization settled in slowly, heavy and suffocating. These weren't nails anymore. They weren't part of me. They were using me. I was nothing more than a host, a shell to keep them alive until they were ready for something else. One night, as I sat in bed with the lights off, I felt the movement more clearly than ever, not just in my fingers but in my veins. The crawling sensation threaded its way higher, up my arms, winding into my shoulders. It spread into my chest, wrapping around my heart. I clutched at myself, gasping, but the vibrations only grew stronger. My body wasn't mine anymore. That was when I understood. The scratching sound had never been coming from the walls. It had always been inside me, growing louder as whatever lived in my nails burrowed deeper into my body. And now, I was no longer afraid of losing control. I knew I had already lost it. I haven't left my room in days. The curtains stay shut, the lights stay off, and I sit in the dim glow of a single lamp, staring at the things that used to be my hands. They no longer resemble anything human. The nails are impossibly long now, curling like sickles, each one thick and gleaming with a surface too smooth to be natural. They reflect light even when the room is dark, shimmering faintly as though they generate their own glow. The skin around them is wasted, gray and cracked, my fingers gaunt and lifeless, but the nails themselves look stronger than ever. Every movement is a battle. My hands twitch without my consent, clawing at the mattress, dragging across the walls, scraping deep grooves into the wood of the floor. I am too weak to stop them. I've grown thinner, weaker, as if they are drawing the life out of me. Sometimes I lie perfectly still, trying not to move, but my hands continue on their own, scratching, tapping, flexing, as if something else is pulling the strings. I keep thinking about the salon, about that woman with her gloved hands. I wonder how many others sat where I did, how many left with nails that weren't theirs anymore. Did she know what she was giving me? Was she just another servant to whatever this is? Or was she something else entirely, something that had never been human to begin with? The questions circle endlessly, but no answers ever come. All I know is that I can feel them now, not just in my fingers, but deeper, spreading like roots through my body. The worst began 2 nights ago. I woke to a sharp crack, like glass splitting under pressure. When I raised my hands to the faint light, I saw one of my nails had split open along a jagged line. At first I thought it was finally breaking, that maybe it could be destroyed. But then I saw movement. From the crack, something small and black wriggled out, glistening in the light before dropping onto the floor. I scrambled back against the wall, heart pounding, but the thing vanished into the shadows before I could see what it was. I searched the floor for hours, every corner, every crack, but I never found it. I don't know where it went. I don't want to know. Now more cracks have appeared. Each nail has a fine line running through it, faint at first but deepening by the hour. Behind the surface I can see them, shapes shifting, pressing outward, restless and eager to escape. Tiny forms, moving as though the nails are not nails at all but shells, prisons holding something alive. They twitch violently sometimes, making my entire body spasm. I know they're going to break free soon, and I don't know what will happen when they do. I've thought about ending it, about finding a way to stop this before it goes any further. But even that is impossible. I tried to cut my wrists, but the blade slipped on the nails as if they protected me, refusing to let me go. I tried to suffocate myself with a pillow, but my own hands ripped it apart before I could draw a final breath. They won't let me die. They need me alive. I spend hours staring out the window, though I never dare to open the curtains fully. When the light hits my nails, I notice something new. They cast no shadow. My hands create a faint outline, but the nails themselves are absent, invisible to the sun. It's as if they don't exist in the same world I do, as though they belong somewhere else entirely. The thought fills me with a dread so deep I can hardly breathe. Tonight the cracking has worsened. I can hear it clearly, sharp pops echoing through the room as the nails split wider. The shapes inside writhe frantically, pushing harder, eager for release. My fingers twitch in spasms I can't control, striking the walls, tearing at the sheets. I can feel them moving higher now, into my chest, wrapping themselves around my heart, forcing it to beat in rhythm with theirs. My pulse is no longer mine, it belongs to them. I know it won't be long. Soon the shells will break open, and whatever is inside will crawl free. Maybe they'll pour out of me like insects. Maybe they'll grow into something larger, something I can't even imagine. But one thing is certain, they aren't going to stop with me. As I sit here, too weak to fight, I realize the most horrifying truth of all. That salon didn't vanish, it moved. It's still out there, waiting for someone else to walk through its doors, someone eager for perfect nails. And when they sit down in that cold chair, under that dim light, they'll never know what they're inviting in until it's far too late. The cracking grows louder. My nails are splitting wide open now. I can feel them crawling out. I don't know what they are, but I know they've been waiting, and I know they're hungry, and soon they'll be free.